Welcome to Cardano Chats. Today we have Steven with VyFi here on the show. It's a pretty awesome DeFi project. They've got a lot of really technical drawings in their white paper. It looks like they are bringing some pretty unique ideas to the space, bridging AI, DeFi, liquidity aggregators, all sorts of fun stuff. So Steven, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, man. To get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? How'd you get into crypto? All the good stuff.
Absolutely. So I started by studying physics. From there, I went into working at a hedge fund. But that actually came from my experience as a poker player, I'd say, as well.
Oh, you played poker. Wait, hold on. Oh, I got to pause you there. So what'd you get into? Texas Hold'em, or what was the deal?
Texas Hold'em online, 888 Poker and PokerStars. I used to play 8 to 12 tables at once because 888 Poker used to limit you at 6, which is why I had to get onto PokerStars.
All right.
But then I started in poker.
It's interesting. So you studied the odds. I actually played for quite a while and bought about 10 different books, studied the odds, learned just about everything that I could. This was 17 years ago, but I had
that's awesome.
a spree with it. Yeah, that's fun, man. Well, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but we'll have to have a conversation offline on that one.
I'd love to talk about poker. It's one of my passions.
Right on.
But essentially from there, poker online was legalized in Australia. And then from that point, I thought to myself, well, I want to make a career out of gambling because I thoroughly enjoy it. So I decided to go work at a hedge fund. And unfortunately, I was at the hedge fund for about a year. I didn't do that fantastically. I walked in a month before Brexit. And then I got absolutely creamed. Oh, wow. And then 4 or 5 months later, when was it, maybe 6 months later, Donald Trump got elected. And then I got absolutely creamed. So I just basically got blindsided twice in a row. But then I came out from there and I continued working. Well, I continued my self-trading whilst training as a financial advisor. From there, I went to work as a financial advisor in investments, working in Australian superannuation, which is our retirement funds. And within that time, I continued trading. And then eventually I got to the point where I realized I wanted trading to be my life.
Okay.
So I then focused down on making trading my life. I was able to quit and work full time as a trader about a year ago now, or a little bit less, 10 months ago. But at that same time, I realized that I've got the skills to run a project. I've got the ability to put a project together. So I don't want to trade. I want to actually do something because trading is very much just for yourself. And I wanted to do something that was a bit bigger than just for myself.
Sure. So what were the tools, just a quick question, what were the tools that you used? How did you learn and develop your skill sets as a trader within these, hedge funds and your different financial jobs? What were you utilizing to improve your skills and make it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd say one of the big things is I had a massive South African, 6'4" ex-rugby player, ex-national rugby player that was screaming at me for a year. So he was the head of our trading desk. So that's pretty motivating to get you to learn. So I was very fortunate to have a hedge fund that essentially, taught me the basics. And a lot of trading, it's not very much that it's high complexity. It's that it requires a high level of skill and emotional consistency. And those skills can come with practice. Some people will maybe never get it. Other people are born with it naturally, right? Yeah. But for the most part, for myself, it took me about a year and a half to 2 years to really build that emotional maturity to be able to manage myself within trading.
Which you developed, I would imagine you developed quite a bit of that in poker. At least I learned how to.
Well, in poker, I had a bit of a different system. I used to just run. So I had a program called Poker Tracker. I'd throw it down, run heaps of tables at once, low stakes games. I'm talking 5-10 cent blinds. And then I would basically just run a straight Nash equilibrium. Right. And then I would just find that with the Nash equilibrium, low stakes, you're playing with fish, you just rake in money over a lot of tables. You'd be making $30 an hour, right? So, I mean, for me, there was a lot less emotion in poker because I felt like I got to a point, and this is where you have to get to in trading as well. I got to a point in poker where I disconnected my thoughts and emotions from the decision being made. Right.
It's exactly. So yeah, and that's easier to do if you're running 8 games at a time or 10 games at a time for
and
sure.
You've barely got time to think about it.
You don't have the swings of one game, right? Yeah, that makes sense. So I didn't want to derail you, but yeah, the emotional consistency is an important element, I guess.
Yeah,
is what you're getting at. Yeah,
that's what I found to be the most difficult part in trading. Like my background is mathematics. Like the mathematics in trading is mostly just addition, subtraction, and proportions. So there was nothing there that really confused me. It was just that being able to have a strategy, have a plan, stick to that plan, and then when something goes against you, you've got a backup plan ready to go. And you're not letting your emotions go, oh my God, what's happening? Instead, you're going, no, my plan is to do this. So I'm going to just do that. And then you execute it like a robot. Sure. So it's just like poker, really.
Yeah. Makes sense. So how'd you get into crypto, man?
I bought my first little bit of crypto back in 2016, I think it was my first piece of crypto.
Okay.
The first boom and bust happened, and I sat there just staring at it go boom and then go bust. And it made me very sad. Yeah. But then from there, I kind of am more of a convert philosophically to crypto more than anything. So I spent years working in the financial industry, seeing the underbelly of what this industry is and what it does, at least in Australia. And I would say we probably got one of the better ones. And I just, it really, parts of it really upset me to my core. The way that you, for example, like you scam and you call scamming a business. A really classic case of this, we just had a royal commission. That's actually why I left banking, was because we had a royal commission into financial advice in banking. And I was working as a financial advisor, and they literally destroyed our commissions. They came in and they were just like, guess what? We're not paying you commissions anymore. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not working here anymore then, doesn't it? But within that, some of the stuff that royal commission found, which I was privy to, like I knew exactly what was going on, such as setting up accounts, then the person dies, and then you continue taking fees off from that account after the person dies until the family decides to close that account. Right? Just something sneaky, sneaky like that. But I mean, and it's just repetitions of things like that across the entire industry that just show that there's an industry that at its core is morally bankrupt to a certain degree.
Sure.
It's not interested in acting in the best interests of its clients or of the individuals that it looks after. It's interested in acting in the best interest of itself.
Yeah.
And that's when I had and that's when I think most people in the crypto space have that realization, oh, I need to look after my own interests.
Yeah.
Right. That's what brings us here. And unfortunately, you can't rely on the powers that be to look after your interests for you. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I would, it's very similar for me. I didn't have the immersion into the internals of a Australian hedge fund, but similar to me, I had a philosophical reasoning for getting involved. When I finally discovered what blockchain is, what Bitcoin was, and what it really was behind it, the decentralization, the ability to the unchanging, the immutability of it, all of these things that were problems back in 2008, right? Serious problems with the great financial collapse that occurred then. A lot of distrust with monetary policy of the governments and the way that we've printed. What, 4 trillion? I don't even know how many trillion. There's 6. There's a lot.
I believe it's 6 at this point.
Yeah. So I mean, that is robbing. It's robbing people because their grocery bill is increasing. And they can't make it to the next paycheck before they run out of money. So all of these things, completely agree. That's what got me into it. Well, what led you once you got into the space to Cardano? So why Cardano for this project?
Oh, that's actually, could we discuss what the project is? Because the answer to that is within the structure of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get right into it. So VyFi, tell me, what is VyFi?
So I'm going to talk about it from a high level first. I really began this concept throughout all of university. I was a private tutor. I also continued private tutoring while I was working just because I enjoyed having some students. And it's also a nice side income. And I realized when I first hit DeFi that there was this massive gap in understanding, right, between engaging with the platforms that you're approaching knowing what's happening to your money once you've engaged with those platforms, and then being able to manage your money effectively and safely.
Yeah.
Right. They're sort of like the three prongs that I see with the difficulties in approaching DeFi. Now, with respect to the one of the big gaps that I saw was that there's a real lack of education on how these systems work and what these systems mean. Right. You can certainly go look through each project. There's certainly a lot of YouTubers like yourself, that are talking about them, but there isn't some sort of centralized mechanism like a uni course outline that you can go to and you can be like, impermanent risk. How do I calculate that? Yep. Yeah. Here's my folder. Let's open to that. Right. There's no sort of centralized repository for that information. So I started with the idea of building a decentralized finance educational repository, essentially, which is this concept of just a repository, an LMS for it, for people to use and learn. Sure. But then from there, I realized that it's not really, if you just teach people this stuff in the abstract, it's very abstract, right? It's almost so abstract, it's meaningless, right? Yeah. Which is why then that's when I first had the idea, we actually have to merge this into a product. We need to be able to bring something out that we can use as an example to teach people, right? So our initial thought was to build a liquidity aggregator, an auto harvester on Ethereum, right? And then using that auto harvester as a method through which to manage people's funds for them, but then use that as an introduction to DeFi on their behalf, right? And now I'll answer your Cardano question. So we are certainly building that liquidity aggregator. That's one of the core parts of our business. It's where essentially we're taking newcomers into the DeFi space and we're guiding them onto the first steps of engaging with a DeFi platform. And we're going to be doing liquidity farming for them on their behalf. And we're going to be managing that farm for them, managing that impermanent risk. And we're going to be keeping it all in one currency, in this circumstance, ADA. And we're going to be keeping it all in that one currency for them, right? So essentially, and we don't actually manage the strategies. Our neural net manages the strategies, right? So there's an AI, please.
No. So you have mentioned several things that I definitely want to get into. I don't know if we should jump into it just yet, but what is a liquidity aggregator? What is a neural net? And how is AI involved in bridging the two of those? And what does that mean? So we could either jump into that right now or finish with that Cardano question.
Well, I'll finish with the Cardano question.
Okay, great.
So we want to do that sort of educational layer that takes people from allowing us to assist them in managing their funds and then bringing them down to the lower level, which is our decentralized exchange, right? Or our DEX. Right. And we want to create an educational layer that takes people from the top all the way down through to the bottom where they're managing it themselves.
Yeah, now I can't tell you how essential that is, first of all. Just no, seriously, from my experience, there's a large amount of people out there that are like, what is DeFi? That I get friends calling me, asking me about it. What is DeFi? How are you doing this yield farming? What are you doing? And honestly, I spent hours upon hours. I think I told you this the other day, like trying to figure out how to get the pair of these two, obscure coins to plant over here and start staking and farming that. And then I've got stuff going on in 10 different projects trying to keep track of it all. But like there's a huge education, and you're right. Like there's nothing explaining what this stuff is. It's you've got to really invest the time to make it happen. It's not an easy or an intuitive process. So what you're doing in terms of education, hopefully, is you keep it simple, intuitive, and it helps bridge people into a space because it's incredibly powerful. When I can get 0.02% in my savings account in a traditional finance bank account versus I can jump over here and for a period of time sometimes get 150% APR or even more as the liquidity changes.
Let me give you a really good example of what you're saying there. So part of our auto harvesting, we're building our models, of course, for where we're going to be putting our coins. Right. And within that, we're building a practice auto harvester in Solidity on our BSC chain. Okay. Now, we've been able to build strategies which are 90% stablecoin, 10% Bitcoin, with a return of 94%. Okay. Like an annual dividend of 94%. Now, essentially,
that doesn't change based upon.
Well, no. They all change a little. They all change a little. Absolutely. But right now they're 24%. But the idea being is that you can hold 90% stable coin which is essentially USD, right, with 10% Bitcoin, which I imagine would look like a lot of people's portfolios right now. I've got about 10% of my money in Bitcoin. I got 90% of my money in the bank. That sounds pretty stock standard. But you can actually earn 24% a year on that if you put it through DeFi.
Right, which is phenomenal.
Right, which is phenomenal. That's a phenomenal rate, right?
Best way to de-risk when you go into a bearish correction or whatever. It's great.
So because we want to build that educational layer, right? That's actually, and back to the original point, that's why we went with Cardano.
Okay,
right?
Let's talk about that. What is it?
Well, the big focus of Cardano is, and I love what they're doing. Like, I love them as a foundation. They are looking at moving cryptocurrency into a state of, into the realm of the poor masses in Africa, Southeast Asia. Philippines is Southeast Asia, but you understand, it's those people that have never really interacted with a financial system before. Now, and this is just a simple like thought experiment. It's not even a thought experiment. It's just like an observation. If you have, an average Tanzanian, 27 years old, really excited that Cardano's hit, they've saved up 50 US and they buy it in Cardano. They get themselves 35, 40 Cardano. It depends on the day. Now, that to them is a lot of money, and all of a sudden they're confronted with the Cardano systems. They've all got internet. Now, if you have never held a bank account, right? You've never held a bank account. You've never done anything outside of cash. You've never managed a loan. You've never managed a depositing deposits. Like, you don't even really know what a deposit is. You've never done it before, right? All these absolute basics that we just take for granted in our Western world don't exist to these new people coming into the system, right? How can you expect someone who's never even managed a deposit account to be able to manage a liquidity pool?
Absolutely not, right? Yeah.
You just can't. And I think it's ridiculous to even conceptualize that they could, right? And it's also dangerous for them, because these people, the vast majority of them, they won't have much money. They're coming on with 40 Cardano, and then they get scammed in a rug pull, or they pick the incorrect coin and then it impermanent risks entirely away from them, right? And they're left with nothing. Now, for us, 40 Cardano, we just go, oh, okay, I'd rather have 40 Cardano, but it's not the end of the world, right? But for an average Senegalese person, that could be a month's food. Right. So the main reason for going with Cardano was because I realized that the best way to integrate this system, or this educational system, into a structured or into a to have the most impact is the correct word, sorry. The way to make this so that it had the most impact was to partner with the Cardano ecosystem, because we're targeting the same audience that Cardano is targeting, because we both have the same goals. Bring DeFi to the world.
Yeah. Okay. So Cardano's mission of bringing economic identity to the billions of people that don't have it, similar to yours in terms of bringing DeFi to that very same group. Which is fantastic. And so you didn't even mention the fee structure, but that's where you look at an Ethereum transaction fee, and Ethereum's a great early platform. I'm not talking bad about them. However, transaction fees are high, and it's prohibitive for somebody. So I've had transaction fees of up to $50, $70, and that's for one transaction, for a DeFi transaction. So obviously, if I'm doing that, and that was the cost to get it in there, I have to wait. I have to lock it up for a couple of months before it's even break even or whatever. So it's obviously pretty prohibitive for somebody to get in with 40 ADA in that scenario. Exactly.
Whereas in ADA, it's going to be costing you 0.17 ADA to make the transaction.
Yeah, which opens up the market to a tremendously large group of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as opposed to BSC chain, it's actually decentralized. So, and that's why I actually see Cardano as one of the biggest risks to BSC chain overall. Because why would you use a chain that does the same thing? It's approximately the same cost, but isn't decentralized. It just doesn't make any sense.
I completely agree.
Now, let's talk about the auto harvester. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into the protocol a little more. You got some really unique ideas. I want to know what is an auto harvester. I have a general idea, but tell us. And honestly, there's a lot of people that are just getting introduced to DeFi, much like you want to have an educational platform. Let's make this in layman's terms so that somebody that's watching doesn't know what DeFi is can really get it, have a clue what it is. So let's start there.
Absolutely.
What's the auto harvester?
I'd say the best analogy you can make for it in the financial world around us would be an index fund. Whereas there's an instrument that you would put your ADA Cardano into, and then we take all that Cardano en masse, and then we use it to purchase positions inside different liquidity pools, or in layman's terms, inside different crypto investments, right? Now that return is then given back to the users as Cardano, right? So essentially, we're taking out the process of, and you've managed this before, so finding the pools that you want to go into, researching the coins on the pools, exchanging into those coins, placing it into it, staking it, harvesting, rolling, like putting the harvest back in, and then at the end, withdrawing it, converting it back to ADA. All of those steps are going to be taken down into deposit ADA, withdraw ADA. Right. Yep. And then there's going to be an emissions. We're not 100% sure on the emissions time yet. It might be 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, somewhere around there, where essentially you're going to be given that harvest that has been made over that time.
So basically, I typically, going to do a DeFi transaction, have to go and find this coin pair on Uniswap or whatever, and I've got to get both of those coins purchased. I've got to get the LP. Then I've got to take the LP and I've got to go deposit it, stake it. I've got to approve that transaction on MetaMask or whatever, and then I've got to finally stake it. So there's all these steps. You're taking all that out of there, and it's just going to be deposit your ADA, stake. Did you choose the pool, or so you guys are autos? Okay.
Yes, there's going to be an option of to begin, we're going to make an option of low risk, medium risk, and high risk.
Okay.
Right. But our entire concept is that we want to be making this as user friendly as possible. It's meant to be for people that don't use these systems.
It's fantastic.
So as opposed to places such as, just to pick one off the top of my head, Harvest.finance, love what they do. I don't want to put down their project whatsoever. I absolutely love them. But if you go onto their website, their UI is very difficult to understand. Right.
I've used it. Yeah.
Even WyFi. Their UI looks very pretty, but in the function of it, it's still difficult to use, right? And to understand what's happening. Yes. So we want to go much more for a system of medium, low, high risk, right? Okay. Mostly stables, 50% stables, 50% not stables, mostly crypto.
Okay.
Right. Now we don't build these strategies manually ourselves. This is where we employ our neural net. Now, a neural net is a piece of AI software that essentially teaches itself the best strategies for a given set of outputs that you're interested in. Right.
Now, is this something that you proprietarily coded, or are you using a third-party service, or how are you putting
proprietarily coded?
Okay. So your neural net is evaluating all of the different, at least from what I learned in the white paper, there's all these different liquidity pools that are paying incentives for providing liquidity, and your neural net is evaluating those and ranking them.
That's correct. That's it.
Okay.
That's absolutely it. So it's evaluating all the liquidity pools based on the incentive that they're providing against the risk held in that pool, right? Because a pool has got impermanent risk.
Okay.
So it's basically balancing that yield versus impermanent risk, and then sequentializing it in which ones give you the best results theoretically for your goals. And that's the most important part, is for your goals, because those goals change.
Right, because you said medium, high risk, and low risk, right? So
exactly.
It's quantifying those in some way so that you can assign based upon somebody's selection.
That's exactly it, right? Okay. So let's say someone selects they want to go into the low risk pool. That's going to be mostly using stables, right? And there's going to be a small portion of cryptocurrency within that. Okay. Now, that means that they're going to receive an LP token for being staked in that pool, right? And now that LP token just sits in their wallet. Now, when they harvest, and this is where we're doing stuff very differently, we're creating a bit of a new system here. When you harvest your you won't actually need to manually harvest from the actual pool, right? Our back end of our system, what we do is we actually harvest everyone simultaneously. We throw it into our auto harvester. It creates the LP token, right? The same LP token that everyone else made, but then we actually distribute that LP token to everybody, like SafeMoon, based on how much they have, right? So just by holding the LP token to the auto harvester, you're going to naturally have an increasing value of LP tokens to trade back in the future.
Okay, so that's just gradually going up. You don't have to manually click harvest. So what's the period for that? And can you manually click harvest if you wanted to exit? Like what happens if you want to exit?
If you want to exit, you sell the LP back to the vault.
Okay.
So you just go. So just like you press the deposit, you would press the how many LPs do you want to withdraw? Max withdraw, right? And then you sell it back. The vault will basically burn those LPs, and then they'll give you back the money that those LPs represent. Simple as that.
Makes
right
sense.
And then within that we've got a few creative systems that are going on. We're going to be making, as far as I'm aware, the first distributive LP token. So the first LP token that's got an auto distributive mechanic inbuilt into it, which is going to be a little
let's unpack that. Let's unpack that for anybody's watching. What does that even mean? Because I don't have a clue. Yeah, absolutely.
So do you know SafeMoon? When someone makes a transaction, 5% of it's automatically distributed to everybody.
Okay, I'm familiar with SafeMoon, but I didn't know that about that. So.
Okay, so Hoj, SafeMoon, they're these set of tokens called distributive tokens that essentially automatically distribute an amount of that token to all the holders based on what percentage of the total supply that holder has.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, so that means it's given out equally to everyone based on how much they own, right? Now, with something like SafeMoon, let's say you got 1% of supply and someone makes a transaction with 1% of the supply, right? 5% of the total supply is distributed amongst all users. That means you would make 1% of 5%. So you'd be making yourself 0.05% of the total supply.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So you're doing that with your
LP token.
Right. Okay.
So you deposit into our liquidity pool, into our auto harvester. That auto harvester pumps you out an LP token.
Yep.
Right? So just basically say you own a position in our auto harvester. That unfortunately is the simplest way we can do it. But then from there, instead of having to harvest, instead of having to do stuff, we from the back end, we just take the harvest, we pump it in, create these LP tokens, and then just spit them out to everybody that has our LP.
Right.
Right? So it distributes between all of them automatically. So that way we're hoping to get. That might not be, by the way, I should add, that might not be the first iteration. That might be the second iteration that we implement that system. The first iteration might be just directly putting the harvest in.
Sure.
But we're definitely going to be implementing a mechanism whereby you deposit your ADA, you don't even need to press a harvest button, and we just do all of it, and then you withdraw ADA.
Okay.
Right? That's the entire concept that we're going for. And we're hoping that that's going to be a nice way to hold people's hands through the experience of welcome to crypto for the first time. We can do a lot of stuff here. What's your risk? And click a button.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, we're actually going to build an LMS as where I originally started, that repository, right? We're actually going to build the LMS as well, and whoever holds our auto harvesting token gains access to our LMS. Right. So
LMS is learning management
system. That's correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So is that going to be in, I want to dig into this with you, but is that going to be in different languages? Because we were talking about primary market of Africa in the beginning and, languages. I wouldn't even know where to begin there. Right.
Initially, we're going to be looking at English just because of the experience that we have within our team. We're also going to hopefully be launching with Russian and Italian.
Okay.
Now, the first language we're going to be looking at implementing is, of course, French, because it's Africa.
Sure.
And then from there, we'd want to be implementing Spanish, so we can knock out South America.
Okay.
And then from there, unfortunately, Southeast Asia gets a lot more difficult because you kind of have to do it as a language by language.
Right.
Every country's its own language.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Well, so what's the learning management system composed of? How's that going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the learning management system is going to be basically like a course, right? So you get access to our course, and our course is going to be split into, at the moment, this is all subject to change, by the way, because we are still putting it all together. At the moment, I'm setting it up with an introductory course, an intermediate course, and an advanced course, right? Okay. Now, the advanced course, and it's going to be split into DeFi courses and trading courses, because most of these people are going to be first time into the world of crypto are also going to be brand spanking new to the world of trading. Right. So just as much as these people that are approaching liquidity pools and aren't accustomed with depositing functions or with financial functions, they're equally not going to be accustomed with trading functions.
Sure.
Right. So these people aren't separate. They're one and the same. So I want to create that sort of system for DeFi, that system for trading. Now you access that system. By holding our auto harvester, and we'd have a beginner, intermediate, advanced lesson set for both DeFi and for trading. Right. I expect each one to be somewhere between 10 to 12 lessons. And each one comes with course material, right? So each one comes with a cheat sheet after the lesson. And then after the whole course, you get a cheat sheet for the course, right? And now the big discussion and debate that I'm having now is, do we include tests and tests and essays? But
yeah.
My mum wants to put in tests and essays, but of course she does. She's
that's great. So that's right. You've got a little family involved in the business. Your mom, and I think even your dad is.
My dad, absolutely. My dad's building the neural net. So my dad's a theoretical statistician.
Okay.
He runs his own consultancy that works in the intersection between geospatial statistics and AI.
Okay.
So, it's a pretty unique field.
So he's building the neural net, which again is evaluating all the different liquidity pools and ranking them according to risk, reward, that sort of thing, which is awesome. So you're bridging AI into DeFi, which is very exciting. You're bringing in a learning management system. There's a lot to this, and we haven't even begun to look, to really dig into
DEX yet.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the DEX. So there's the DEX element, and I guess, how are you uniquely positioned? And tell a little more about this deck, because you've got some unique ideas for how you have you're not really competing with other DEXs. Am I right?
No, not strictly.
You kind of need them to an extent. Tell me a little about that.
Yeah. So the big thing about our model, and particularly in our auto harvester, and a big thing that our neural net will tell you, is that the best way to manage risk is to average risk out across a lot of different platforms. Sure. I would love to say that our platform is the safest and our platform is never ever going to be hacked ever, right? But the reality is, not even Pancake can say that, right?
Sure.
And within that, part of what we need to have a safe liquidity aggregator and to be able to manage people's incomes effectively and safely is multiple competitions or multiple DEXs that we can go to provide liquidity, right? Okay. And then we aggregate that liquidity from all those DEXs and then bring them back to our auto harvester. Now, another big reason why this is important as well is because we actually distribute a portion of that profit of our auto harvester. So a portion of the fees, a portion of the harvest that's generated is actually distributed to holders of our token, VyFi.
Okay.
Right. So the entire idea is, essentially, even if no one uses and provides liquidity to our DEX, that's absolutely fine, because we've got a token that's taking in 15% of all the farm from all the other DEXs across the Cardano ecosystem.
So are you saying that if I'm a holder of your token and I haven't done anything with it yet, I just own it, that there's an auto-distributive mechanism there?
Unfortunately, it's not going to be auto-distributive. That's a lot more difficult to do. But you deposit your token into our bar. By the way, all these names are going to be changed. We're talking with marketers to work out how to actually name them.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No worries. It's early stage, right? So, I mean, we haven't even launched smart contracts yet. Are you guys developing with Plutus developers, or what's happening there?
Absolutely. We're developing we've got 4 Plutus developers. In fact, we just got our liquidity pool on the testnet yesterday.
Did you?
Yes.
All right. Well, congrats.
Super excited. Now we're working out how to build a farm, because the conjunction problem makes that a little bit of a beast. But
the conjunction problem. The concurrency deal?
Concurrency problem. Yeah, concurrency.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious about that. I know there's been some solutions. I believe Sunday Swap had a solution for that. I don't know. Like what's happening with that? Any updates on that?
Sunday Swap have a solution that they haven't shared with anybody, and they've only kept it to their decks, and they're not going to implement it anywhere else other than their decks. And then if you ask them for it, I'm sure they'll send an assassin out to kill you. So like, there's no way you're getting information out of that.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, look, Sunday are very secretive about what they do. I do mean that as hyperbole, of course. They are very kind, but they're just not giving away their information, which is fair enough. Neither are we. Okay. And then essentially MinSwap. I don't know if MinSwap have a solution for it yet. They've got a solution. They've got some original liquidity pools up, so that they've got. But I don't know if they've got a solution for concurrency. We're working with 3 PhDs, three PhDs.
Okay.
So
that are the Plutus developers,
they're the Plutus developers, yeah. So
well done on that one. At least it sounds good.
Yeah, look, it sounds good. That's it, right? No, they are. That's a lie. They're fantastic. They're really bright. Yeah. They are much smarter than me. I'll tell you what.
Okay, good.
But within that, I'm also working with them, of course, every day. Okay. And we're kind of hoping that with our brains combined, we can sort of fix the problem. There's a few other little design things in terms of farm that we have to sort of reinvent the wheel for.
Sure.
An example of that is that we're actually going with pre-minted tokens rather than minting them with every step of the chain, with every block. And the reason for that is because, one, I want a super hard cap on supply, and two, it gives us a lot more monetary control over the token. Okay. Now, within that means we've kind of had to develop a new system to actually get that. We're developing a new system now to actually pay out that farm. So there's so much fun to have.
Locked? Yeah, or any of the tokens going to be locked, or what's
that? Absolutely. 85% of supply is going to be entirely locked to farm, and then another 12% of supply thereafter is going to be locked for specific things that need to be voted on by our governance token.
Okay,
between 10 and 12.
Are you starting off initially with the governance token, or is that going to be gradually decentralized?
The governance token is going to be coming in at probably, we're hoping around the 8 to 10 month mark.
Okay.
Properly implemented. Sure. So we've got a 2-year roadmap. As you mentioned, this is a pretty big thing that we're putting together. So we've got a fairly decently chunky roadmap to sort of match what we're trying to do, recognizing that it's all a step-by-step process. We're not going to be able to just release it all at once.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned you got a liquidity pool up on testnet. So anything else in terms of status of where you guys are at?
Yeah, so we got a liquidity pool up on testnet. We're building our first iteration of the auto harvester in Solidity now, with the concept being that once we've built it in Solidity, because our in-house devs and myself, we can do that in Solidity. Then we just throw that over then we work with the Plutus devs to essentially translate it into Plutus. We thought that would be a lot easier to do than to just like hand them a theoretical outline and say, make this theoretical outline happen, because we can be like, here's an actual functional version. Okay. So I would say within a month, let's say a month and a half, we should hopefully have a sketched out auto harvester on Solidity, functional DEX on Plutus, like a semi-functional to whatever extent Cardano allows it to be functional at that point.
Okay.
And then from there, we would be converting that auto harvester into Plutus. So we'll be hoping to launch with the DEX in full on launch day, and we're hoping that we'll have the auto harvester up and running within a month thereafter with a simple iteration of the educational platform. And then to actually put that platform behind the auto harvester wall, like you have to have one of our LPs, that'll probably be another 3 months before we actually integrate that wall into the auto harvest, into the LMS.
Very good. Have your Plutus devs gone through the Plutus Pioneers program, or what's their...
So no, they actually haven't been strictly... Well, they've done the Plutus Pioneers program because all the stuff is public.
Okay. Right, correct.
But again, as much I actually completely agreed with them, they're PhDs in functional programming. Plutus is a post-dip.
Right. So they're well qualified. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. They just might have to learn more of the specifics, I imagine, of Cardano's
That's the big thing, right? For them, the biggest hurdle is just learning that UTXO logic. But the team that I've been working with have actually been sort of hard lining that for the last sort of 2 to 3 months, because they decided independently of myself that they wanted to do stuff within this system when they heard that Plutus was being built. And then we found each other and went, we're doing stuff. And they're like, we want to do stuff. Come on board.
Great. Very good, man. Well, so is there anything for the public to check out just yet in terms of code or anything like that? Is there going to be
we've got a GitHub.
Okay. I'll include it in the link to the video if you want to provide that to me.
I will. I'll happily provide that to you. I'm just not 100% sure, because I know at the moment our auto harvester is private, because we're building a system that's
sure.
We're building our own system, right? It's completely our own design. You can have a look at it on the white paper. It is there.
I believe you mentioned that some elements of what you're doing are centralized, correct?
Yes, so the auto harvester.
Right. Okay. So very good. Nothing wrong with that. And then you've got a decentralized element, which is the DEX.
Which is the DEX. That's correct. And also the bar is decentralized as well. So the distributive contract that takes all the profits from everything and distributes it to the holders of our token. That's also decentralized. But the section that won't be decentralized will be that back end of the auto harvester, which is the harvesting, minting the LP tokens so that they can be distributed to all the holders. Right. Okay. And that has to be centralized, unfortunately, just as a result of the code and what we're doing. Okay. But when we thought about it, we also thought furthermore, to be a first port of call into the land of crypto, having a sort of mild centralized step to look after you as a stepping stone before you move on to our completely decentralized DEX, we actually thought that that's not a horrible idea. No, you know, there's going to be the hard philosophicals that go, no, that's wrong.
Yeah, you get a pretty opinionative group in crypto, but I mean, there's reasons that make sense for what you're doing, and there's reasons that make sense for the decentralized side of it as well. And obviously, you're bringing governance to the community too, so that they can participate in the direction of the protocol. I think that's awesome. It's great. So, and that you're bringing educational element to this as well for those people that really need more of a guide. Honestly, I would have loved it. I mean, if anything could have shortened the time that I had to spend figuring it out, would have been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get some of those hours of my life back.
and the other advantage is, right, and look, this was what was the catalyst for all of it. When I realized that I wanted to do YouTube videos walking people through how to use it, and I wanted to use those systems and explain to them what all of those systems were, and then I realized these are all laid out terribly, and then I thought I could lay this out so much better. And honestly, my first thought was layout. That's where this entire project started. It was UI. I was like, why isn't this UI just heaps better?
Yeah, 100%. That's great. So, man, I'm trying to think of what else we could cover here. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you wanted to make sure that we go over?
No, the only last bit that I'd like to add is just that bit on the family endeavor. So I've got my dad helping me with building the neural net. My mum's also a teacher, so she's going to be helping us with the pedagogy of the LMS.
Yeah, that's huge.
So we're not just... She's got a master's in pedagogy, so we're not just sort of leaving this to I'm writing up some stuff and hoping that people understand it. We're hoping to actually design it as a structured course. Yeah,
very good. That's great. And in terms of funding, where's your sustenance? How did you guys fund? Are you self-funded? Are you raising money? Is there going to be an IDO? How does somebody participate and get your coin? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So we are self-funded, really. Okay. So we've got the money to basically implement the first stage of this, but we are running an ICO because we want to secure the money to run all of this, the whole 2-year shebang, not just the DEX. Okay. Now, within that, if you want to get involved, it hasn't launched yet. We are just rebuilding our website before we launch the ICO. Okay. But follow us on our socials, Instagram, Discord, not Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and Telegram.
We'll include all of those links for everybody. Yeah.
And there's just going to be a direct purchase. There is going to be a limit. because we don't want any one holder to have more than 10,000 ADA worth of our token at launch.
That's great.
So, and we realize, we're in a fortunate position where I have my own business sort of outside of this that generates my income and funds most of this project. So within that, we're fortunate enough that we are just able to limit people to how much they can give in, so we can avoid having whales. Yeah,
that's great, man. Very cool. So how do we know that you're not a scam or a rug pull and let me just say one thing real quick. Cardano chats, our mission is to edify and build into the Cardano ecosystem. We want to introduce a community to projects that we like. We like your project. It's very creative, a lot of cool solutions. We're not here to validate or say that an investment is good or bad. I'm not talking we're not talking about price or investment or any of that. That's not what we're about. However, there are projects out there that bring concern to people, and how do we know? How can you assure people or give people some confidence that you're not, out there to scam?
Well, first and foremost, we're doxed. That helps.
You're what?
Doxed. We're public. Here's my face. My name's Steven. I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Right.
If you go to our website, you'll also see an address that you can serve us at. So there's two reasons that you can trust us a bit better. I would also say that there is a layer of security provided by Plutus the language, although that's not perfect, of course. But also our team, everyone in our team is doxed. We've got an entirely visible team. We're regulated by ASIC, the Australian Securities Investment Commission.
Okay.
And as such, we have to report to ASIC. And we are currently applying for Australian Financial Services license. So that means that if we were to break the laws of, they're called RG146, if you were to break the legislation in terms of financial, protections for consumers, we would presumably get sued and shut down. So our interest is to act in the best interest of our clients from both, and that's a whole other side to this business that I haven't spoke about, is the business structure that I built to do this. Because essentially we're legally bound by our governance token, not just from a moral sense, but we're actually bound by our governance token from a trust perspective. I've actually built this business as a two-layered trust, where the top layer is the governance token, and that governance token, any decision that's made by that governance token has to be legally abided by, as it is the platform's the beneficiary, the governance token is the person that makes the decisions, the trustee.
Got it.
Sorry to use heavy financial terms.
Yeah. No, when you're, and that's at some point in the future, 8 months from now, whenever it is, when you've got that, when you're ready to make that transition to full decentralization in terms of governance, basically.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But those structures are already set up. They're already set up, right? So,
very good.
So we've already got the trusts. We've already got the corporation. We've already got, we're applying for the licensing. So these structures already exist. They haven't been formalized from a coding perspective yet because it's not built yet. But if we don't meet the requirements of those structures, then I would have, in theory, I would have the Australian Securities Investment Commission knocking on my door saying, hello, why are you stealing from people?
Yeah.
And I have to report to them.
That's great.
So I found that's really important. If you watch my interview with Wayne Marcel, we actually deep dive into it for about 30 minutes. Where we do an entire discussion about the intersection between, where the DeFi space and the crypto space is going, and to what extent do we need to implement measures such as public visibility, measures such as formal company registration, measures such as legal trust funds, and all those classic instruments that we have for management and for those security protocols. And how do we implement those traditional means of security into the decentralized space? And that's an intersection that people that should be looking into it find it a lot easier not to, and the projects that would like to look into it, I don't really know many that would like to look into it, to be honest. They would just much rather avoid regulation.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's just not the reality of the world that we're facing, because regulation's real.
Yeah, and it's coming, and to an extent, regulation is validation. I mean,
yep.
So if they're bringing regulation, they're not shutting it down. They're trying to figure out a way to milk it.
That's it.
Is the bottom line. But and also make it safer for people. I do believe that there is a benevolent idea there as well in some cases. So very good, man. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover, but
no, man, that was already more than I was expecting to cover. So,
yeah, we got into it.
When I outline it, it's so much bigger than it is in my head.
No, honestly, if you look at the white paper, I highly recommend going to read the white paper for anybody that's watching this. We will include the link for that so you can check out more about what VyFi is doing. Just have some fun looking at those technical drawings on the work that's gone through to plan this out and map this out and get all of these components working and talking to one another. Quite a bit of challenge ahead. It's a good thing you got 3 PhD Plutus developers, 4 developers.
Actually,
total.
Just quickly. Our whole team, we've got 3 in-house, 4 consultants. 3 of the consultants have PhDs. The other one's got a master's. So between our team, there is 3 PhDs and 7 masters.
Very good. Well,
so, and again, I should add, I've met a lot of people who have come out of university that are completely incompetent. So it's not necessarily saying that it will work, but we're setting ourselves up with the best team to be able to make it happen.
That's great, man. And I wish you the best of luck in continuing forward. Can't wait to see how this unfolds. And we'll definitely include links so people can get in touch with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for your time, Steve.
And I'm super excited as well. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Absolutely. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.